Guys, I think there is one thing about next season for the Bulls that I am not looking forward to, and really one thing only, and that's the impending free agency of Zach Lavine. You just know that it is going to be the constant talk of the team all season. Reporters are going to be asking about it to him all year. Analysts will try and read into every cryptic message, facial expression, body language from Lavine to try and figure out what's going on in his head and what he's going to do. But what if we didn't have to worry about that? What if somehow Lavine and the Bulls agree to an extension this offseason, which would secure Lavine as a Chicago Bull for the long term, and then we also don't have to worry for the entire season whether or not he's going to leave. And there are a number of ways that this can actually play out, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Let me first just start by saying I think it's highly unlikely that Lavine would agree to an extension this summer, and I'll get into the reasons why in a bit, but let me just make that clear from the get-go. But after an interview that Zach Lavine had yesterday with NBC Sports Chicago while training for Team USA to compete in the Olympics, Lavine made some interesting comments when asked about his potential contract extension talks, and this quote comes from a tweet from Casey Johnson, the Bulls beat writer, where he said, "I think that it's going to play out the right way. I'm not even worried about it right now, but we should be in talks soon." By the way, guys, I had an extreme honor of Casey Johnson agreeing to do a one-on-one interview with me yesterday. This was shortly before they met with Zach Lavine, and I just want to give a huge shout out to Casey in advance of me actually doing an interview with him. And so I'll likely be uploading the interview on Monday, so stay tuned for that if you want to hear from the Bulls insider. But anyway, after that shameless plug, this is a pretty broad statement from Lavine, which makes sense because obviously he's not going to share much or give any details of his plans or talks and how they're going, because that's really between him, his agent, and the front office. Now, for those who aren't aware, Zach Lavine signed a 4-year contract worth $78 million back in 2018 after the Bulls matched this offer sheet from the Sacramento Kings when Lavine was a restricted free agent. Now, I'll be honest, I remember at the time when they matched that offer that I was a bit concerned this was an overpay, and I felt that the front office really had no choice but to match it, given the fact that he was the main piece in that Jimmy Butler trade that they had made the year prior, and that this would have been a waste of a trade if they just were to let him walk now for nothing. And the reason I thought that was because Lavine only played a half a season. He was coming back from a major injury after tearing his ACL, and although he looked good, like he was still the Bulls' best player from the gate right when he returned, but he wasn't the player that we see today. He was much more inefficient, a high-volume scorer with even worse defense and limited ability in terms of impacting the game on the court. Well, of course, I was completely wrong. Not only did Lavine prove that he was in fact worth that contract, but he actually proved that he was worth much more than the contract that he signed. You have a lot of players in the league who are making considerably more than Lavine is, but are nowhere close to the caliber of player that he currently is. So suffice it to say, Lavine is going to want to get paid. I mean, he even said that in his postseason presser where he stated, "I definitely want what I deserve." And really, that likely means a max contract. For an all-star at his age and the fact that he still continues to get better every season, he's going to want a max contract based on what some other people are getting paid around the league. Now, you can argue whether or not Lavine is worth a max, but I'm not here to debate that. We can save that for a different day. The point is, it's highly unlikely Lavine is going to accept anything less than a max offer. But for a moment, let's talk about his options and what could potentially transpire either this offseason or the next one. And a shout out to Rob Schaefer, who put a lot of this information together in a more clear and concise format that helps us to easily understand how this could work. So this first scenario or option of what the Bulls can do with Lavine is you offer him a max contract straight up extension this offseason, but it's for less than what they could otherwise offer him if we were to wait until next offseason after his contract expires, which I'll cover in a second. But in this scenario, the Bulls could offer him 120% of his 2021 salary, which would net out to be about $23.4 million, and it could pay him $105 million over the next 4 years, which would start in the 22-23 season, because they would still need to wait until his current contract expires. Now, at that price tag, I sincerely doubt that Lavine would ever agree to that, because he would still be vastly underpaid given his level of production and status in the league. This next option, though, would be to have Lavine play out the final year of his contract, as most are expecting will likely happen, And once his contract expires, the Bulls will be able to offer him a 5-year max extension, which would actually go for 130% of his current salary. And the offer would likely go around $200 million over the course of 4 years, or $40 million per year. Around $40 million. You're talking a difference of $17 million per year and $95 million more over the course of the contract from the previous option. So yeah, I think Zach is going to wait it out. Now there is a third option though, which I actually wasn't aware of, but what the Bulls could do is clear enough salary cap space this offseason by renouncing free agents or waiving guys that are on partial guarantees like Thaddeus Young and Satoransky. Then they could offer Lavine a renegotiated and extended contract that would actually begin for this upcoming season. Going this route, the Bulls could offer Zach a max deal for 5 seasons, just like the second option, at $195 million, so slightly less than option 2, but fairly negligible, as you know, it's around the same amount more or less. But what's important for this option, at least for the Bulls anyway, is that this would secure and lock in Zach right now for the next 5 years, rather than risk losing him next offseason when he becomes an unrestricted free agent. However, the downside to this option is, well, can the Bulls make it work? You know, they would likely have to waive Thaddeus and Satoransky or trade them. They would have to renounce all their current free agents, which would mean they would have to renounce the bird rights to Daniel Tice and others, which would enable the Bulls to offer more than any other team to try and retain them as free agents. That includes everyone. Anyone that's a free agent on the Bulls have the ability to offer more than other teams. Or do the Bulls risk letting Lavine play out the last year of his contract and then still offer him the max next season, but would give the Bulls more cap flexibility for this offseason to bring in some other free agents, say like Alonzo Ball. And then the Bulls would still be able to operate over the cap by signing Lavine to a max contract next offseason. Now, my personal take on this: there is no way Lavine accepts option number 1, because why would he? I mean, yes, he does risk potentially having an injury, which let's please pray that that doesn't happen. He also does risk having a down year, which could lower his value, and then he may not be able to get a max contract as a result, but I think that would also be highly unlikely to happen to Lavine given his progression every season. And I know some people were talking about the rumors of how he could potentially take a pay cut to give the Bulls more cap flexibility. Yeah, that's not going to happen. For all intents and purposes, he has been taking a pay cut the last 2 seasons, being underpaid, under market value. So option 1 is out. Now option 3 does intrigue me again, because I didn't know that this would actually be a possibility for Lavine in terms of a contract extension until I read this article by Rob Schaefer. I mean, you could lock in Lavine now on a max deal for 5 years and not have to risk losing him in free agency next season if the Bulls underperform. That's definitely enticing if you're the Bulls, because then for the rest of the season, you don't have to worry about all the nonsense from game to game. Oh, is Zach unhappy? What is Zach going to do this offseason? Like, no, he's under contract for the next 5 years in this scenario. Like I said before, though, the downside is cap flexibility, and it would really hamstring the Bulls going into this offseason by not being able to bring in some quality talent because you just gave all of your cap space up to Lavine. So for the Bulls, you really have to assess, is it worth taking a risk and letting Lavine play out this season? Hopefully he balls out and is even better than before. The Bulls have cap space to bring in another name, again, say like Alonzo Ball or another playmaking point guard. You hope Zach is happy where he is and you sign him to a max contract extension next offseason. And keep in mind, the Bulls have the ability to offer him that extra year so he can secure more money by staying with the Bulls than any other team in the league. So the Bulls have that in their favor. Or do you say, it's not worth the risk, let's get him a long-term contract now, we'll sacrifice the cap space and figure it out as we go into next season when some more cap space is freed up with other expiring deals? For me personally, I would probably still go with the former in option 2. Let Lavine play out this year. You hope that the Bulls have a significantly better season than the one we just saw. Lavine decides he wants to stay. He knows the Bulls can offer him the most money. He gets his max contract next season, and then the Bulls have the cap flexibility to potentially retain guys like Thaddeus Young or Daniel Tice, and even bring in some other names. I think this sets the Bulls up for success in the long term, knowing that you must add pieces this offseason to really get this team to the next level. And if you max out Lavine this offseason, you take away the ability to bring in other talent. And if the Bulls underperform again, well, then now you have a risk of, disgruntled players who may want to start asking for trades, and that's definitely not a position we want to find ourselves in. It'll be interesting to see how things pan out. I mean, as Lavine mentioned, talks between his agent and the front office will likely start happening soon. We'll see if they can come to some sort of extension this summer or if they'll hold off until the following season. I want to know what you guys think, though. Which option would you prefer for the Bulls, or which option do you think Lavine would actually prefer? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.